The Nazi Party, despite its name, had its roots in socialism. The party's full name, the National Socialist German Workers' Party, reveals this connection. Early on, the Nazis adopted socialist rhetoric and policies to gain popular support. They promised economic equality, worker empowerment, and a break from traditional hierarchies. This message resonated in a Germany still reeling from World War I and economic hardship.
Hitler, a master propagandist, understood the power of appealing to the working class. He skillfully blurred the lines between socialism and nationalism, creating a potent ideology that captivated millions. The Nazis promised a utopia where the German people, united in their national identity, would share in the prosperity of the state.
This socialist facade masked the true, sinister nature of the Nazi ideology. As the Nazis consolidated power, they gradually shed their socialist pretenses. Trade unions were abolished, individual rights were trampled, and a totalitarian state arose, built on fear and oppression. Once in power, the Nazis moved swiftly and ruthlessly to eliminate any opposition. Their tactics were brutal and systematic. One of their first targets was the free press. Newspapers and radio stations were brought under state control, ensuring that only Nazi propaganda reached the public.
Political opponents, including members of the socialist and communist parties, were rounded up and imprisoned in concentration camps. These camps, initially designed for political prisoners, would later become the horrific sites of the Holocaust. The Nazis also established a vast surveillance network, using the Gestapo, their secret police, to spy on citizens and root out any hint of dissent.
Fear became a pervasive tool of control. People were afraid to speak out, afraid to criticize the regime, afraid even to whisper their doubts to their neighbors. In Nazi Germany, silence meant complicity, and complicity ensured survival.
While the UK Labour Party operates in a democratic system far removed from Nazi Germany, some disturbing parallels exist in their treatment of political opponents. Labour, once a champion of free speech and open debate, has increasingly resorted to silencing dissenting voices within its ranks. Critics of the party's direction, particularly those who raise concerns about radical leftist policies, have been met with accusations of bigotry and intolerance.
This tactic, known as smearing, aims to discredit opponents and stifle debate by associating them with extremist views. Furthermore, Labour has shown a disturbing willingness to silence dissenting voices within its own party. Members who express views deemed unacceptable by the party leadership have faced expulsion or pressure to conform.
This intolerance for internal dissent is a hallmark of authoritarian regimes, not democratic parties.
Throughout history, radical leftist movements have often been susceptible to infiltration and manipulation by Islamist groups. This phenomenon stems from a shared enemy, the West, and its values of individual liberty, secularism, and democracy.
Islamist groups, seeking to advance their theocratic agenda, have recognized the potential of leftist movements as vehicles for societal change. In Lebanon, the Shiite Islamist group Hezbollah successfully infiltrated leftist and secular political parties.
By exploiting shared grievances against Israel and the West, Hezbollah gained influence within these groups, using them to advance their own agenda. Similarly, in Iran, Islamist revolutionaries exploited the Iranian student movement, which had leftist leanings, to overthrow the Shah's regime in 1979.
The students, initially allied with the Islamists, believed they were fighting for a more just and equitable society. They soon learned, however, that their Islamist allies had a very different vision for Iran's future.
The alliance between Islamist groups and leftist movements is often one of convenience, not conviction. Islamists view leftists as useful idiots, tools to be exploited in their quest for power.
Once their usefulness has expired, these leftist allies are often discarded, imprisoned, or worse. In Iran, after the revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini, the supreme leader, swiftly moved to consolidate his power and eliminate any potential rivals.
Leftist students and activists, who had played a crucial role in the revolution, were targeted in a brutal crackdown. Many were imprisoned, tortured, or executed. The fate of leftists in Iran serves as a stark warning about the dangers of allying with Islamist groups.
These groups are driven by an ideology fundamentally at odds with the values of freedom, equality, and democracy that many leftists claim to espouse.
The Crusades, often portrayed in a negative light, were in fact a defensive response to centuries of Islamic aggression against Christendom. Beginning in the 7th century, Muslim armies swept out of the Arabian Peninsula, conquering vast swathes of the Middle East, North Africa, and parts of Europe.
These conquests were accompanied by widespread persecution of Christians and other religious minorities. Churches were destroyed, holy sites were desecrated, and countless Christians were forced to convert to Islam or face death.
The Crusades, launched in the 11th century, were a belated attempt to stem the tide of Islamic expansion and protect Christian pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land. While the Crusades were undoubtedly brutal affairs, it is essential to understand the historical context in which they occurred.
They were a reaction to centuries of Islamic aggression and a desperate attempt to defend Christendom from a powerful and expansionist enemy.
The transformation of the German Socialist Party into the Nazi Party, the suppression of dissent in Nazi Germany, and the manipulation of leftist movements by Islamist groups all serve as stark warnings from history.
They remind us that freedom is fragile, that vigilance is essential, and that even well-intentioned ideologies can be twisted to serve evil ends.
We must learn from the mistakes of the past and resist all attempts to silence dissent, suppress opposing views, and erode the foundations of a free and open society.
The future of freedom depends on it.